Should we supplement vitamin D? In my opinion, based on the research I've looked at and a handful of data from various different well-accredited doctors, it appears that vitamin D is absolutely essential to be supplementing in today's crazy world, where most of us have obligations that keep us from being able to absorb and synthesize adequate levels of vitamin D due to not being outside enough, ladies and gentlemen. This is a huge epidemic. This is a huge problem. Before the advent of the smartphone and all these digitalized devices, I mean, your keychain basically is like a smart keychain now. Everything has a Wi-Fi signal. Everything has a Bluetooth capability. Before all of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, people spent a lot more time outside. Nowadays, it's hard for me to see people hanging out on their porches anymore, even when it's cool out. I mean, I live in a pretty remote part of Virginia, and even here in this remote area, people when the sun goes down, the blue television light is just beaming through the houses like there's some type of alien abduction going on. Being outside is very beneficial, ladies and gentlemen. Even if you get just small amounts of light from the sun, the UV radiation, the UV light, the different wavelengths, the energy from the sun is very nourishing. It's healthy for the bones. Vitamin D levels, ladies and gentlemen, are important. Vitamin D is a pro hormone. It's much more than just something as simple as saying, oh, it's just a vitamin. No, your body, there's hundreds of different physiological processes that require and prefer adequate levels of vitamin D to be up to, again, adequate levels for these processes to take place. I hope that came out right. So should we supplement vitamin D, ladies and gentlemen? That is the question. And in my opinion, again, based on my research and what I've looked into, absolutely. So I've experimented with a handful of different vitamin D supplements. I am still in an experimental phase, so I'm not going to recommend which ones to use, because in order for me to do that, I want to have used something for over a year before I recommend it. So what I can recommend, however, ladies and gentlemen, is that vitamin D3 appears to be much more absorbable than vitamin D2, which is what your doctor will try to prescribe you. And I'm not saying to avoid going down the standard American route of health and, vitamins and all that stuff. If that's your thing, that's your thing. I have never recommended that anyone avoid or neglect proper health care from their physician. I personally, based on the research I've looked into and looking at the work of certain doctors like Dr. Berry and whatnot, it appears that vitamin D3 is more absorbable. It's readily available as well, ladies and gentlemen. You can get it in gel capsules. You can get it in liquid form. You may even be able to get it in patches. But what I do is I take vitamin D in MCT oil, ladies and gentlemen, because what you'll find is that vitamin D is actually much more absorbable by the body if it's mixed with oil. So if you are going to take vitamin D3, I would recommend personally that you take it with some type of maybe avocado oil or MCT oil, some type of fat. Just make sure it's not canola oil and things like that. But, if you are curious as to how much to take, it appears that around 2,000 to 5,000 international units, or IUs, is very beneficial. So again, I'm not recommending anyone does this. I'm just telling you what I do. I take about 5,000 IUs of vitamin D currently. And, vitamin D deficiency, ladies and gentlemen, can be linked to depression. I posted a few things here on Patreon yesterday about studies that were done on suicide patients that were looked at. They had low levels of vitamin D in comparison to people who were, non-suicidal and happy. There's some conflicting evidence as to whether or not vitamin D is completely linked to depression, in the sense that it actually causes depression. I think depression is such a multi-headed hydra, ladies and gentlemen, that to try to pinpoint it down to one deficiency is very irresponsible, because everyone's depression is usually caused from something different, whether it be a actual depletion of a mineral or multiple nutrients lacking in the diet, or it could be from emotional trauma and a lack of the ability for the mind to integrate back into reality those emotional traumas. Not all depressions, ladies and gentlemen, can be funneled into a nutritional deficiency, is what I'm getting at. However, it appears, folks, that vitamin D deficiency is a contributing factor for malaise and depression, as well as fatigue, not an unhealthy bone density, brittle bones. So our bones, ladies and gentlemen, when we reach 60, 70, 80 years old, when you fall on the carpet, you are not supposed to break your bones. My grandmother, God bless her soul, God rest her soul, fell when she was in her late 60s and cracked her hip. Bones are supposed to be like bamboo, strong and flexible. Chronic deficiencies are plaguing the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen. They are plaguing our families. This system is destroying your health, whether it was intentional for these individuals who, let me rephrase that, whether or not it was intentional that this insane world, let me try to rephrase that one more time, ladies and gentlemen. Whether or not it was the direct intention of these, agricultural companies and all these companies that control the majority of the vitamins, the supplements, the food, whether or not it was their intention to destroy the population's health with their fortified food, with all this other garbage, the processed food, whether or not it was their intention for it to plague our health or not, doesn't matter. It's successfully rolled out, and our health is being affected in very detrimental ways. We're experiencing consequences for lack of vitamin content in the food, in the mineral content in the food. It's not just that, though, ladies and gentlemen. The constant exposure to these goddamn devices is destroying our health. Excuse my language, but this is a huge problem that is going over so many people's heads, because so many people think that these smart devices are so great. People are literally turning their homes now into what are known as smart homes, where you can tell, literally, I'm not making this shit up. Excuse my language, ladies and gentlemen. You can tell your microwave now from like 20 feet away to cook your popcorn. I'm not making this up. My wife told me this the other day, and in a sense, I guess I'm kind of unhip to all the news going on, because I had heard about some of these devices that you set up in your home where they can turn your houses into like smart houses, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to talk about particular companies and which devices they have, but some of the biggest companies now have these speakers that you can plug into your devices, and you can control your lighting and stuff from inside your house with your voice. Very strange. It's an AI system, ladies and gentlemen. These AIs even have their own names, their own personifications, their own alter egos, so to speak, their own personalities is what I was trying to say. But she told me that this company came out with a smart microwave that will actually listen to your voice, and you can tell it to cook popcorn. Like, you can say, cook my baked potato, and it knows what you're saying and cooks it, predicated, it cooks it on the right setting, predicated upon what you say to it, because obviously you can't cook a baked potato in the same way that you can cook a bag of popcorn. So now you can sit on the couch while you're plugged in to your blue light emitting 50-foot television screen that's killing you and destroying your hormones, your endocrine systems, your DNA, your cells. And you can tell your microwave from 20 feet away while you're watching your giant television screen to radiate with radiation, RF frequency radio waves, your food. All that's missing now is a little mobile Android device, or not a little personal robot that actually flies over to the microwave and gets your food and brings it to you. What the hell is going on here, ladies and gentlemen? I recommend watching a movie called Wall-E. WALL-E, I think it was called. This is a Pixar film that is 3D animated. And it's basically showing how humanity is literally becoming digitalized. We're being plugged into an AI system. Chances are maybe you've actually seen that movie already, and I don't usually recommend watching movies that are 3D animated, because most of them are junk, but this one's actually pretty cool. Or I wouldn't say cool, it's kind of jaw-dropping how accurate it is. Humanity right now is going in a negative way or direction, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why when the sun's out, regardless of how long it's out, if there's some solar maximum, if the sun is shining through the clouds at any given time of day when you have free time, try to take advantage of it. Even if you can just put your arm out, like maybe you're at work in an office, position your chair so you can get some sunlight on your skin. This is a huge problem. There is a vitamin D deficiency going on here in the world, ladies and gentlemen. And when you lack vitamin D, just heard a strange noise from the corner of the room, excuse me. When you lack vitamin D, ladies and gentlemen, there are so many different physiological processes within the body that, experience the repercussion of doing so, or experiencing a lack of vitamin D. I think my cat is on the other side of the wall right now scratching, and I can hear the scratching noise, and it's taking my focus away from, excuse me. But, bad bone health is one of the biggest things that, your bone marrow and the cells within your bone marrow get affected when you lack vitamin D, ladies and gentlemen. It seems to, based on the research, show that you have a higher likelihood of getting sick. People who get more sunlight as well tend to be happier people. And that's what's so interesting to me about vitamin D, is that it appears, based on the research and the studies, that vitamin D does play some role in depression and warding it off. Again, I posted yesterday a PubMed a study that was on PubMed about how lack of vitamin D in suicide patients was rather prevalent. So, again, this is something that I don't think most doctors are really talking about. It's amazing to me how when people go in for depression or anxiety issues, doctors don't really ask you, okay, what is your diet like? Like, do you eat processed foods? Are you eating, a lot of sugar and stuff like that? A lot of people who have depression issues eat sugar, excessive amounts of sugar, and they eat excessive amounts of wheat. And even if they don't think they eat sugar, chances are they eat carbohydrates, which break down into glucose, which is a form of sugar. So now you have circulating sugars in your system, and sugar puts you on a crash, ladies and gentlemen. If you actually look at what sugar does to your brain, it affects your brain like a drug. It actually stimulates regions in your brain, the same regions and similar regions that hard drugs do. So sugar is highly addictive, ladies and gentlemen. It took me so long to actually finally break away from needing or wanting or craving sugar. My sugar cravings are gone. Every once in a while, ladies and gentlemen, I will get like a craving for sweets. But if I wet my fingernail or my fingertip and put it into some sea salt and put it on the tip of my tongue, usually the cravings go away. That's actually a great hack, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in muting the hunger signals. If you're trying to do things like intermittent fast and stuff like that, when you get hungry, you can just, lick the tip of your finger and have some salt here, like I do. Put it on the tip of your tongue. It'll stimulate your flavor centers, and it'll calm yourself. It'll calm you. It worked for me. It's worked for many people as well. It's kind of an interesting little hack. But sugar, ladies and gentlemen, huge problem. I'm going to do a complete series on sugar and how toxic it is. It's like a drug. We don't view it as a drug because it's become such a part of our culture and our dietary history as human beings here in this dimension, that it goes overseen. It's not examined well enough. And, sugar is a huge monopoly. A lot of people make a ton of money off sugar. It's in the company's best interest for the people to remain hooked to all these bad foods. But wheat, ladies and gentlemen, processed foods are one of the biggest problems with depression, in my opinion. I'm not saying that it's going to completely get rid of depression, but my oh my, has getting rid of processed foods and eliminating excessive carbohydrates really helped me with my depression and my anxiety. But and just so you know, this is not processed refined salt. This is actually Mediterranean sea salt that I ran through the blender and got it really fine because it was super coarse. But again, ladies and gentlemen, it just kind of blows my mind that doctors don't go, okay, well, before we put you on these strong selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, I just got a message from my wife. Before we put you on these strong antidepressants, how about we, do a vitamin test, a hair nail analysis? Why don't we look at your vitamin D levels? Why don't we look at these key minerals and vitamins and see if you're lacking any in your diet or in your blood, your tissues, you name it? Because the body requires these things, ladies and gentlemen. And when you don't have these things, it only makes sense that the body is not going to operate properly because there's a delicate balance within the body. It needs adequate vitamins, minerals, fats, you name it. So wouldn't it make more sense to think that, okay, you have a depression issue. Let's first look at whether or not your body's lacking any key minerals and building blocks. Because in a sense, if you're missing selenium, if you're missing iodine, if you're missing magnesium, that's like a car without a seatbelt, spark plugs, and an exhaust. Is the car really going to operate properly? No. But if you ameliorate or if you mitigate that issue or fix the problem, by putting the exhaust back on, getting new spark plugs and getting a new seatbelt, in this sense, minerals, then the car's going to run better. So again, I'm really interested in vitamins in general, but vitamin D fascinates me probably the most.